Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Zabasaja of Bloomberg QuickTake. Thanks so much for being with me today. So today, October 5th, is actually known as International Teachers Day. And in a year like 2020, as I'm sure you've noticed, the work of educators has become more vital than ever. There's also been a growing movement here in the United States to help schools progress forward their curriculum. And joining me to talk about this today are two women who have actually been a part of this movement in their own right. So Caitlin Zhao of Diversify Our Narrative and Sarah Saka of Alumni for Change. How's it going, you two?
Good, really good.
Great. Thanks so much for being with me today. I know you're both in school, so thanks for fitting us in.
Of course, we're happy to be here.
So Caitlin, I wanted to start with you. Can you first tell us a little bit about Diversify Our Narrative and sort of what the genesis of the organization really was?
Yeah, of course. And so Diversify Our Narrative is a grassroots student-led movement that was actually founded this past June. And basically, our goal is to push for racial diversity in terms of the curriculum we teach and the books we read inside the classroom. And so we're actually composed of a bunch of high school student organizers throughout the country. And basically, what our organizers are doing is they're pushing for a variety of initiatives that seek to integrate and amplify voices and authors of color in terms of the books they read. And since then, we've actually sort of started pushing for a lot of different things along with ethnic studies. And we leave a lot of it up to the organizers. So honestly, a lot of it is up to them, but that's the general gist of what we do.
And so how did you all come together?
Yeah, so it was actually me and my friend Jasmine, and we've actually assembled a entire coalition of entirely women of color for our executive board. But we were honestly just looking at the new wave of racial justice movements in this country, especially in the wake of Black Lives Matter, and all the work that the Black and Brown activists have currently done in order to sort of pave the way for all of this activism to even take place in the first place. And we were basically just looking at what we could do as students to sort of help and assist the cause in any way possible. And that's when a lot of our friends, started getting to thinking, how can we push this movement forward in terms of the education we receive? Because one of the biggest trends we sort of realized was that a lot of us are in college now, the people that sort of like founded this initiative, and we realized that a lot of the stuff we studied in college, especially with regards to race, is super important, but we weren't exposed to any of that in high school and even before we graduated. And so we felt like the education system in this country is so powerful because we have so many amazing teachers who do so much to teach us every day. And all of us are sort of required in this country, for the most part, to go to school until 12th grade. And so we really felt like it was incomplete to graduate without having the necessary knowledge on race in America because it's such an important topic. And so in order to really properly utilize the system at hand, we really thought that, pushing for diverse and anti-racist texts in the classroom would be a phenomenal way of doing so.
Yeah, and Sarah, that sort of takes me to you too. I wonder, how did your own personal experiences in high school sort of shape and motivate the work that you're doing with Alumni for Change, which is similar to what Diversify Our Narrative is doing?
I think we just started on a more local level. It was myself and Lauren D'Souza, one of my classmates, who early June, similar to what Caitlin was talking about, we wanted to see where we could most effectively affect the most change. And so naturally, we thought of Arizona and our high school, which is an all-girls private Catholic high school. And so we started a petition and somehow got 1,000 signatures in 24 hours. And it just took off from there, where we built a coalition of around, let's say, 20 plus people in our core team and hundreds across the country who are alum or community members or affiliates of the school. And for myself, I am a white passing Iranian American, the daughter of immigrants and a Muslim American. And so my experiences at a Catholic high school stayed with me, but I only didn't really process them until later on, similar to what Caitlin was talking about. You don't realize the necessity and the role that education around race, identity, faith, privilege can play until later on in college, but that process should begin much sooner. And so we began a campaign around to diversify and make an anti-racist curriculum across subjects to increase diversity and equity and inclusion in hiring practices in the student body and demographics across all aspects of campus and academic life.
And I wonder for both of you, what's been the reaction? I mean, it's, as I mentioned, it's a growing movement. So how have educators responded? How have schools responded to what you're doing?
Yeah, I honestly think the response has varied a lot, especially within Diversify Our Narrative. I think for the most part, most of the educators that our students have reached out to have been extremely supportive of our movement, which we're so grateful for, because honestly, none of the changes we're pushing for would be possible without them, especially in terms of the curriculum that they actually teach. I do think some of our organizers have run into a lot of pushback, especially in some, more conservative areas where this topic is not really, I guess, as well integrated into culture or just practice in general. And so that has been a little bit of a struggle, but we try our best to, keep them motivated, give them advice, and just really give them the tools and the resources they need to, keep fighting the good fight.
And Sarah, you guys have had some trouble, right?
Yes, it hasn't been the smoothest road, but with any sort of cause or activism, that's sort of unfortunately the norm or expectation. Fortunately, we've had some amazing educators and people who do education policy in our team. We come from all fields on our team, and actually most of us are either in college or in grad school or with professions. And so we draw from our experiences. And so because of that and their own professional experiences, they can actually really inform and guide the research we put out there. And so when other educators in the Valley have taken our resources, they know it's coming from a well-intentioned and well-researched place. We've had positive reactions from educators in terms of using the resources. We've made an anti-racist curriculum site aggregated from different resources. We've reached out and done several one-on-one conversations with practitioners and educators across the country from both Catholic and secular backgrounds and other Christian backgrounds as well. And we've had some great conversations to inform our work. Unfortunately, it's not all positive because we are also dealing with the Catholic Church aspect of it, which is an extra layer of complication in terms of issues of race and faith and gender and sexuality being reckoned with within the Catholic Church, especially increasingly right now. And so with that lens, we've also had some difficulty, but we are still hoping now 3+ months in, with a little bit of patience and determination, that we can still continue to have dialogue. We also operate in Arizona, which, while maybe a state that goes blue, also has it's a difficult political state, to put it lightly. And so while the tide is shifting in terms of the conversation, still social issues have a long way to go before they are seen as acceptable and not just politicized. That race and religion, identity and privilege, these are topics that should be discussed regardless of our political affiliation, and more just as humans and people with shared human dignity within the Catholic framework.
And do you both, I mean, I wonder, have you gotten to talk to students, like high school students right now? And are they, I mean, we know the next generation Z is definitely more energized and sort of plugged into social issues, but how has their response been? Because school started for them, right? So I wonder what they've said to you.
Yeah, no, I think I was honestly blown away by how passionate and invigorated all these students were to sort of just join the cause as soon as it was launched. Personally, for Diversify Our Narrative, we actually launched towards the end of June, and we literally got so many signatures within the first few hours of launching our campaign. And I feel like social media has been such an integral tool in sort of bringing that to light. And, currently we've grown to around 5,000 student organizers throughout this country, which has been phenomenal to see. And for the most part, they're so enthusiastic. They're constantly, showing up to the organized calls that our team arranges for them. A lot of them will actually sort of sometimes give presentations and tips and advice to other organizers outside of their own district. And so it's a very collaborative workspace. Honestly, they've been supporting each other and sort of helping each other walk through the obstacles and the different problems that they face, as well as motivating each other in just one one single workspace, which is our Slack, which is predominantly where most of the organizing takes place. And so, I honestly just think it's such a fantastic reminder that even though we do deal with pushback from school districts in terms of, passing a board resolution or implementing these policy changes we're talking about, that we have such a strong, motivated group of students behind all of that effort. And I think it's definitely very, very inspiring to everyone. And I think lastly, just being able to see the amount of students that have recognized their power, even though they're not even 18 yet, they're still high schoolers, and just seeing how much change that they can actually enact at such a young age has been incredibly rewarding, I think, for them to realize and for our team to realize as well.
Sarah, have you had similar reaction? I mean, Arizona, people are paying close attention to Arizona, especially with the election.
Right. And so all eyes are on us, but also I think going back to the social media point, social media has been an incredible tool because even anonymously or under whatever alias, there's a certain power and a source of empowerment for students to be able to, we post stories and testimonials that we get still daily from people, most often anonymously, and that's empowering for students to see. Unfortunately, there is still fear of repercussions, especially for current students to speak up based on handbook policies, based on the environment, and just given the fact that our high school has yet to really sit down and have a dialogue with us. But even with that, we know and have heard through other channels from students that they appreciate the work, they appreciate the ability to be able to speak up and out. And ultimately, even though, we are called Alumni for Change, most of us are anywhere from 1 year to 12 years out from high school, but at the same time, our work is centered around the needs of current students. We know what the demographics are still like. We know what the curriculum is like there. We know what the faculty composition is, and we know that there's so much more work to do. We also, there's a boys' school across the street, and we know about students from that side, and it's amazing to see them so engaged in our work as well. And honestly, just students across the country, from mimicking the original petition we had and doing their own iterations of that, to just we've created an informal network of people at different schools, secular and faith-based, across the country, where we check in. How's your petition going? How is your town hall going? How has your student body or administration responded? And so we're always in touch with students. We just hope that perhaps with time, they'll be able to more comfortably and freely be able to speak up about what it's like for them to have their own experiences. For just one quick thing is that, for example, we're not allowed to have racial or ethnic or faith-based affinity groups at our school. And that is something that would be just so key for students to be able to learn about and be proud of their identities. And so that is one thing we are concretely pushing for to empower students.
And have you two worked together at all, Caitlin and Sarah? Are your organizations sort of, I imagine you have similar books and references that you're including in your curricula, but have you two worked together? Is this the first time you're meeting?
First time we're meeting. I think in beauty of the Zoom age, but definitely we've reposted, shared from, drawn from Diversify Our Narrative sources. We've known about you all for a while, and obviously it's great to be able to look at the landscape and see what other people are doing. We unfortunately think sometimes have to tailor our work towards a more local audience sometimes, or the religion lens, and so with that, we kind of juggle different sources on our end.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with Sarah and everything your organization does, I think we definitely have seen your social media as well, which has been really, really cool. And we would love to sort of look at the resources and the curriculum that you guys have compiled as well, because that's something that we're actually looking into, is that right now a lot of our organizers are pushing for change sort of from an external level. They're trying to enact policy change in terms of passing a board resolution, but at the core of implementing that policy actually comes the curriculum that sounds a lot like what you guys are working on in terms of a local level. And so I think that would be amazing for our team to also look into and collaborate even in the future. And so I think that's everything that you're doing sounds amazing. And I think there's definitely room for our organizations to cross and collaborate in the future.
That would be really exciting. We're going to have to follow up on that. And then just finally, I wanted to ask both of you, we've heard from President Trump and the White House, they've sort of been a little bit dismissive of, implementing some more progressive, diverse curriculum into education. I wonder if both of you have a message to policymakers about why this is so important for students, why this is important for teachers, and, just for the country in general?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the forefront of what should be on our minds when we're talking about implementing these changes in education is that we have to remember that this shouldn't really be a politicized process in the first place. I think a lot of times we do use the word, more progressive education. And I guess that is technically what you should describe it as given our current political climate. But at the end of the day, and I know Sarah sort of touched on this earlier, is the fact that issues of race and identity belong in our classroom. And there's nothing innately out of the ordinary of doing so, besides the fact that it's just currently not the status quo. But what it actually serves as is serving the needs and amplifying the voices of students of color and empowering them, because historically in this country, that hasn't always been the case. And so implementing these changes can honestly be seen as a step in the right direction to actually being more inclusive and equal to all groups in this country, which is something that we've had a problem with since the very beginning and inception of this country. And so I just think it's very, very important to remember at the end of the day that we need what's best for our students. Our education system was meant to serve all students, and if it's currently not doing so right now, there's nothing too out of the ordinary in implementing the changes in order to get to that place. And I think that the work that we're doing and all the work that the Black and Brown activists and all these other educational reforms people are pushing for around the country, whether it be Diversify Our Narrative or any other group out there, I think we're all taking that step in the right direction. And so we're extremely grateful, and we think that is just what should be prioritized when we're thinking about these issues.
Sarah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, two-pronged message. One, very quickly, is the fact where in the language of everyone and shared dignity and all students, reiterating that everyone should have the equal opportunity to learn about their history, their family, their identity, and who they are. Classrooms are not political battlegrounds. Classrooms are people where we're supposed to be kids. We're supposed to come out of this not with trauma, but rather with the ability to grow and to learn and just be proud of who we are and to be proud of our friends and to have all sorts of friends around us in the most basic and distilled sense. And having a more robust curriculum, different faces, people who look like you in the faculty will help our students to be more accepting and understanding and just grow as themselves. And the second part of that is that we oftentimes struggle with notions of justice and equality, what that means in this country, but we forget that before diversity, before inclusion as buzzwords comes equity. And in order to establish equity, we need to take some fundamental steps toward that again, do not have to be politicized, though of course our identities are political and who we are. And that's okay. Maybe it's about embracing that, the politics of our identities. But in order to really establish economic equity, even racial equity, gender equity, at the end of the day, it's about storytelling and listening to each other. And what we try to do with the social media, the research on both our ends, I'm sure, is to just uplift and tell some of these stories with the hopes that maybe someone will read them and just understand and grow a little bit more in their empathy. I do believe, and also someone who's now in grad school for policy, that what is devoid of policymaking is just that sort of just a little bit more empathy and humanity, among other things. But and then I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to end. And I just want to make sure people know, how can they find information about both of your organizations?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's www.diversifyournarrative.com if you want to get involved. You can also check out our social media platforms. It's just Diversify Our Narrative on Instagram, and our Twitter is the Dawn Campaign. And so you can find most of our stuff on there.
And then for us, it's alumniforchange.org. And on our Instagram and Facebook, it's actually BIPOC, BIPOC, at XCP. XCP is our high school. And also, if you Google Xavier Alumni for Change, I think a few things will pop up.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much. Like you said, you're in school, so I really appreciate your time today and for sharing this message and the work that you're doing for our students and for our country. So Caitlin Zhao and Sarah Saka, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.